to show. This is where success is ours for the taking. The chains have been broken.
7 ways. Pan-African. Ideas are changing our world.
African sovereignty. The belief that all African nations and peoples share a common destiny and must work together politically, economically, and culturally. Advocates for continental integration and collective sovereignty. Self-determination calls for the freedom of African peoples from colonialism, neo-colonialism, and foreign domination. Supports indigenous leadership, policy-making, and development. Solidarity among Africans globally. Strengthen the connection between Africans on the continent and those in the diaspora, examples Caribbean, Americas, and Europe. Promote cultural pride, heritage, and shared struggle. Economic independence encourages Africa-controlled resources, regional trade, and resistance to exploitative global economic systems. Opposes dependency on former colonial powers or Western aid. Cultural revival and African identity. Restores pride in African history, languages, values, and traditions. Rejects the inferiority complex created by colonial narratives. Anti-imperialism and anti-racism. Resist all forms of racism, oppression, and imperialist expansion, including by modern global powers. Call for justice and equality for all African descendant peoples. Collective security and peace. Promote peace and cooperation amongst African nations through organizations like the Alliance of Sahel States. Oppose foreign military intervention in African affairs. The Motivator Show. This is where success is ours for the taking. The chains have been broken.
7 ways. Pan-African ideas are changing our world.
African sovereignty. The belief that all African nations and peoples share a common destiny and must work together politically, economically, and culturally. Advocates for continental integration and collective sovereignty. Self-determination calls for the freedom of African peoples from colonialism, neo-colonialism, and foreign domination. Supports indigenous leadership, policy-making, and development. Solidarity among Africans globally. Strengthen the connection between Africans on the continent and those in the diaspora, examples Caribbean, Americas, and Europe. Promote cultural pride, heritage, and shared struggle. Economic independence encourages Africa-controlled resources, regional trade, and resistance to exploitative global economic systems. Opposes dependency on former colonial powers or Western aid. Cultural revival and African identity. Restores pride in African history, languages, values, and traditions. Rejects the inferiority complex created by colonial narratives. Anti-imperialism and anti-racism. Resist all forms of racism, oppression, and imperialist expansion, including by modern global powers. Call for justice and equality for all African descendant peoples. Collective security and peace. Promote peace and cooperation amongst African nations through organizations like the Alliance of Sahel States. Oppose foreign military intervention in African affairs. Motivator Show. This is where success is ours for the taking. The chains have been broken.
7 ways. Pan-African ideas are changing our world.
African sovereignty. The belief that all African nations and peoples share a common destiny and must work together politically, economically, and culturally. Advocates for continental integration and collective sovereignty. Self-determination calls for the freedom of African peoples from colonialism, neo-colonialism, and foreign domination. Supports indigenous leadership, policy making, and development. Solidarity among Africans globally. Strengthen the connection between Africans on the continent and those in the diaspora. Examples: Caribbean, Americas, and Europe. Promote cultural pride, heritage, and shared struggle. Economic independence encourages Africa-controlled resources, regional trade, and resistance to exploitative global economic systems. Opposes dependency on former colonial powers or Western aid. Cultural revival and African identity. Restores pride in African history, languages, values, and traditions. Rejects the inferiority complex created by colonial narratives. Anti-imperialism and anti-racism. Resist all forms of racism, oppression, and imperialist expansion, including by modern global powers. Call for justice and equality for all African descendant peoples. Collective security and peace. Promote peace and cooperation among African nations through organizations like the Alliance of Sahel States. Oppose foreign military intervention in African affairs. It's the motivator here. This is where we translate our words into action and where success is ours for the taking. How you feeling, people? How you feeling? I'm feeling fantastic. It has been an outstanding few days. I've had the privilege to meet some outstanding, inspirational human beings. And a few of those human beings, hey, I'm going to tell you, you're going to hear from later on in this podcast. We're going to have some giants in the Pan-Africanist world. People who inspire, motivate you to do good for yourself, your family, your communities, and your wider networks. Watch this space in approximately 40 minutes' time. You're going to hear from these giants, these movers and shakers, Pan-Africanists, movers and shakers, inspirational people, people who can move you to action, because actions speak louder than words. Believe it or not. Well done, well done, well done. So yes, I'm fired up. I am truly fired up. This is going to be truly another inspirational experience. So before I get right into the show, what I want to do, of course, is acknowledge past contributors and noting, of course, that each of these contributors continue to go from strength to strength. Yeah, strength to strength. inspired, highly motivated. These are the people that ensures all communities thrive. Don't believe the propaganda otherwise, I am assuring you. This is a de-brainwashing podcast. Here, only the truth shall reign. I say again, here, only the truth shall reign. Yes, I'm fired up. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I know those of you who are regular viewers to our podcast would appreciate the efforts and the quality of the information that we exchange, okay? I simply ask you to spread the word. Encourage your family members, encourage your friends, your networks to view the podcast and just taste a little of the quality of the content, appreciate the content, and help us to spread the word. And in doing so, you contribute to improving the world. Yes, let's be that ambitious to improve the world. Yeah, I understand, as an aside, there is a object flying towards the sun, which is earmarked to arrive at the Earth. It's called 3I slash axis or atlas, get it right. Okay. It's a most peculiar object because as it's rushing towards the sun, the tail is facing towards the sun. Most strange. And apparently, it's making changes in its trajectory as if it's being controlled by onboard machinery. It's not just hurtling through space like a bullet and responding to gravitational changes. It appears to have a mind of its own. And very recently, when the astrologers, those who have the ability to view this particular object at its closest point to the Earth, curiously, the national agencies stopped the feed. We're told that by 2027, this object could potentially arrive at the Earth. And finally, he says, well, we may not be alone. Yep, you heard it here first. I repeat the name of it. Put it into your search engine. That 3I slash atlas. Note what the commentaries are saying about this particular object. There you are. A bit of variation to my usual themes, huh? Ah, remember, we are but one race, indeed, a single species. Many ethnicities, but we are essentially the same. We are one species. An alien, yeah, seeing us for the first time, we see us as one peoples, one species. I want that to sink in. It's really important because those who seek to divide the peoples of the world for their own machinations, okay, are doing us all a disservice. I would just want to remind you of the principles of the Motivator Show. We seek to provide good quality information, information that inspires you to do better for yourself and your family and your wider communities. You understand that the Motivator Show does not believe any human being should go without food, good quality food, should have access to good water, clean water, access to health care, good quality health care, should have access to the best possible education. You should not have to pay for it. It should be yours as of right, ours as of right. Don't let the capitalists tell you otherwise, that you have to pay for it. If you can't afford it, like some places in the United States of America, you go bankrupt or you die on the street in the richest country in the world. Obscene. Absolutely obscene. The motivator show, the motivator would never lower ourselves to that level. No, it is a human right that all human beings should have access to good quality food, good quality education, clean water, good health care, and of course, have a right to have a roof over their heads. There you go. Principles of the motivator show. It's pretty basic, huh? Common sense in some quarters. That is what we must strive for. And don't allow those naysayers to say otherwise. Praise be. Long may you be a great human being, I say to you all. And together we can transform the world. And if we are visited by people from outside the planet, that we can hold our heads up high, that we've treated each other with respect and integrity. Respect and integrity. And of course, we are empathetic to each other's needs and requirements. Praise be. All righty, now it's time to recognize just a few of my past contributors. Now you've got that out the way. And I know many of you, following my previous pronouncement of the principles of the Motivator Show, wanted to hear that again and again. Repetition, of course, is important. I want to give a big thumbs up to the leaders of the IPOB. That's the indigenous people of Biafra. I want to give the big thumbs up to the national coordinator who's graced us with his presence here and provided good quality testimony of the aspiration, the desire of the Biafran people, the Igbo people of Nigeria. And he reminded us, of course, that the term tribe is a recent innovation produced by people from outside the continent. Actually, the Igbo people, Biafra, is a nation and was a nation prior to external intervention. The Yoruba people is a nation, was always a nation before external intervention. Hmm? The Ashanti people are a nation, not a tribe, a nation with all the faculties of nationhood before external intervention. Hmm? You've got it. Yeah? You've got it. So that's what we mean by de-brainwashing. Mhm. I give praise to the IPOB. And we can but hope that sanity will reign in Nigeria. And your leader, Mazi Nandikano, will be released in due course. Praise be, praise be. Long may you continue your struggle to reinstate your nationhood. Praise be. Keep up the struggle. Keep up the struggle. But thank you for gracing us. Yes, it was an unusual double sequence, yep. But his evidence to us was of such quality. The need was such a powerful one. We had no choice here at the Motivator Show to do a double sequence. And indeed, the podcast that follows the second of that sequence will follow with the next 48 hours of this podcast. Oh, yeah, it was truly powerful. And thank you again. Thank you again, man. Thank you again. I want to give a big thumbs up, of course. And those of you who remember, um, this was quite a remarkable man, yet another man, yeah, of the British West India Regiment Heritage Trust. Mhm. You recall Paul Chambers, who was able to speak to us about the contributions of African peoples. Yes, it is, we're referring to African people on this occasion because this is very much an African centric podcast. This is true. This doesn't mean that other people did not contribute to the First World War. But it was notable, it is necessary for us to remind the world that hundreds of thousands of Africans were killed in the First World War, heroes and heroines. But Britain, amongst others, wiped records of them from the memorials. Can you imagine? Men and women died to defend Britain, but yet Britain had the audacity not to include their names on the memorials. The moral bankruptcy associated with that statement is beyond the pale. But as we delved into that particular subject, as I testified previously, I discovered that members of my own family served in the First World War. Well, we'd forgotten it somehow, you know. That's why these national records are so vital. Mhm. There you go. I say to all of you with families, you can recall family members who served in the First and Second World Wars. We salute you. We salute you and honor their sacrifice. We salute you. Thank you. Thank you. And I wish the British West India Regiment Heritage Trust all the best wishes that we can extend to them. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well done, you. Well done, you. Well done, you. And lastly, last quick reference, if I may. I want to give praise and respect to a incredible woman. Okay. Okay. Now, she wasn't actually on the show, but I want to call her out anyway. I want to call out the members of the Caribbean Social Forum, Britain's largest Caribbean organization, truly Pan African organization, could include all islands of the Caribbean and Americas mhm, under a single leadership mhm, and supporting them as they get older through their older age and supporting those families. A remarkable organization. And of course, Pamela Franklin needs to be there in the headlines. An outstanding human being. She is a quite remarkable human being. Okay. And all members who dedicate themselves to support each other and their families, well done you. It's the height of humanity. Well done you. Well done you. Continue your great work, and great works will continue. All righty, all right. So that's just a few, just a quick snippet of the contributors to the Motivator Show. What is important that if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, I want to encourage you to do so. Our YouTube channel, alongside our Mixcloud channel, indeed Facebook pages, TikTok, and other platforms, are there to allow you to communicate with us. Okay. I want to thank you for your support, both written support and, of course, verbal support. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We will continue the work, yeah? We will definitely continue these work. But if you haven't subscribed, if I can encourage you to do so, we would very much appreciate your support, okay? Let me put it on the screen. And often I'm asked this question, what do you get? I say, you encourage us to continue to share the positive information that is designed to encourage, enliven, and brighten your day. Yeah? And we hope you share those sentiments with your family, friends, and network and beyond. Thank you again. Thank you again. I would now move on because we've got approximately 20 minutes before the all important interview with those Pan Africanist movers and shakers. They're big brains, wonderful people, determined individuals. I now need to move to the lifestyle messages segment. The lifestyle messages segment is included because we do not discuss our health sufficiently, particularly in the African heritage communities, wherever you might be. Mhm. The levels of diabetes are off the charts. In the Caribbean, it is actually an epidemic. Every other family, there is a person who suffers from diabetes. Mhm. Hypertension, high blood pressure. Yeah. It is rifing through the communities. Hmm. Obesity or fatness is an absolute epidemic, both here in Europe and Britain, the Caribbean, the Americas, and increasingly observed on the continent as well. So we need to be very conscious of our lifestyle and its contribution to affecting our ability to live a long, healthy life. And I say to you all, if in doubt, ask questions. And it's really important when you hear these messages. Yep, these messages are designed to inform and to remind you that your health is truly your wealth. That's where your wealth is. It's in your health. And therefore your ability to function and interact, yep, to improve yourself financially. But it's all based upon you possessing good health. And for some I recognize that can be challenging. Don't worry, I recognize that. But I want you to hear the words of the professionals. Okay. And this particular professional, as he summarizes what we all can do in order to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Just spend just a few moments. I just want you to hear what the professor says on this subject. He's the expert, not myself. He's the expert. I say it's behooving on us all to listen carefully and to heed his words. Professor Kevin Fenton says, I'm a public health director. Here are 5 things you can do to improve your health. 1. Mindful and balanced eating. Nourish wisely. Eat whole, balanced meals with awareness to support energy and well-being. 2. Get outside. Be with nature. Time outside reduces stress, improves mood, and strengthens your connection to the world. 3. Stay curious, stay engaged, explore new interests, keep your mind sharp, build social contacts, and boost your happiness. 4. Get active, move it or lose it. Move daily, lift weight, and do cardio. Exercise, improve physical, mental, mood, and energy. 5. Prioritize rest and sleep. Disconnect, rest. Quality sleep supports mental clarity, emotional balance, and overall health. So those are very simple messages. And I say to you all, the professor devoted his life to our health and well-being. And so therefore, his words should resonate with us. His words should enable us to make good decisions for our general health and well-being, both physical, mental, and spiritual health. And if you follow his advice, which is delivered in a calm, soothing voice and intended just for you, there is no financial gain on his part. The gain is all on your part, because together you can transform your health and well-being by following his advice. So what I'm heartened by is the numbers of you who've heard the advice and have responded positively to that advice, and responded by coming together in common aim and common purpose, recognizing If you take care of yourselves, you're more than likely able to take care of others around you. And you're able to take care of others around you, you enable them to take care of themselves and other around themselves. And therefore, we have a cumulative impact. And together, we can transform the world. And in doing so, we'll live up to the reasons why we as human beings actually exist to support each other, to be the best version of each other. And in doing so, we transform the world. But it does begin with you taking those deliberate steps to think about your health and take deliberate steps to ensure your health and well-being is maintained at its peak. Because in doing so, you demonstrate to the next generation what is necessary to maintain good health and vigor. What I'm heartened by is the number of you who have heard these messages, responded to these messages, have come together in common aim and common purpose, understanding we work together, you can transform your health and well-being and be the best version of yourselves. I'm heartened by the numbers of letters and messages I've received from you. Understanding, coming together in common aim and common purpose is a worthy ideal to aspire to. And those who've implemented that ideal to ensure that you are best represented in the healthy sector. Mhm. That's what's important. I want you to watch these people who've come together in common aim and common purpose, understanding if we work together, you can transform your overall health and well-being. Because we want healthy communities. I know this for some is a tough message. I get that. I get it. But we want healthy communities. Watch this space. That's right, they've come together in common aim and common purpose. There you go. See them? That's right. They've pooled their resources. That's right. That's it. Hope you've got up now. That's it. That's it. Hope you've got up now. You're not just sitting there watching us. That's right. You can make all the difference. If you're fit, your wife or your husband's fit. Your wife and your husbands are fit. Your children are fit. Your children are fit. They share their friends and families. That's it. Get up now. Let's do it together. Let's bend our knees. You've got it. You've got it. That's right. You've got it. They've even got their children there. That's it. Bend your knees a bit. Oh, let's do some jumping now. There we go. Yes. You're on the right track now. You've got it. Let's exercise together. It's only a few moments. Another 30 seconds. Oh yeah, I paused it there. There you are. There you are. Just a few minutes exercise makes all the difference. Do that every day, just for a few minutes. It will be transformative. And we can improve the overall public health for all the communities. You exercise, pay attention to what you eat, and of course, be very conscious of your mental health. But if in doubt, please, we urge you to go seek professional advice. But we want to reduce obesity levels in the communities. We want to reduce diabetes levels in the communities. We want to reduce the levels of hypertension in the communities. Okay. We want to, of course, improve overall mental health and, of course, spiritual health. Are these not laudable aspirations that we all should share? If you help us to do so, we help you to help yourself, and you help us to help you. There you are. Because at Ubuntu is this, there's a very clear Ubuntu saying here. I am because we are, I am. We are interconnected. We're part of each other. And together we can transform the world. There you are. There you are. But thank you. Thank you. And I want to really give praise to the many messages I've received for our lifestyle section and the difference it's made to many people's lives. Okay? This reminding us to be conscious of our lifestyle, our health, and the impact it can have, not only on ourselves, clearly has an impact on ourselves, but those we love most, those closest to us, indeed. And that ripple effect throughout the communities. That's why we must be conscious of our actions and the implications, the knock on effect those actions have on others. Praise be. And what I'm minded, of course, is I've received so many messages of support, and thank you for that level of support. Look, if you're in South London, the organisation that I just featured there are based in South London, not too far from myself, obviously. Okay, they are a wonderful group of people who've come together in common aim and common purpose. Recognise they pull their resources, they can hire the facilities and ensure that they can regularly exercise together. What I want to do, and if you're in South London, why don't you just come visit them? You know, why not? Yeah, they won't mind. Exercise together. You will not be judged. I emphasize, you would not be judged. You'll be welcome. There you go. They're called the Countdown Health and Wellbeing. They meet every Monday and Wednesday from 6:30 to 8 p.m. They meet at number 12 Tatum Street, at Tatum Street, Wharf here in London. Postcode S for sugar E17 1TN. The email address is countdown0405 at gmail.com, or you can phone if you get lost. It's and you're in the UK. It's 07960 803 588. I commend Countdown to you as a organization providing high quality community service. The community value of this organization cannot be judged. I'm sure we're saving the NHS, our National Health Service, the universal service facility we have here in Britain, tens of millions of pounds. Well done, Countdown. Well done to all of you who've heard these messages. Well done to all of you. I know what it takes to do this week in and week out. Okay. Before we go to the main feature of today's show, I also want to give another quick announcement, and I hope you allow me to do so. Stay with us, please. Stay with us. You recall a month or two ago, we had an inspired African man by name Blinker. Okay. And he talked about the Africans, particularly Africans of the diaspora, historic diaspora. I'm amongst them. More than 250 million of us exist and live outside of Africa. It is important that that number, which is a significant number by any stretch of the imagination, okay, um, remember their roots. Mhm. Remember that you are not displaced. Remember, remember that there's actually your direct family in Africa still living and thriving in Africa. That actually you have a cultural heritage, yeah, from a particular nation state. Hey, it could be from Biafra, huh? It could be Ashanti. Mhm. It could be the Mendi people. It could be Zulu. Yes, it could be Zulu. Mhm. Can you imagine if you were able to reconnect to your ancestral families? Can you imagine? But a useful step forward, an action we can all take, is to think about us as a unit, as it were. Okay. And Blanket, of course, suggested that there's a treaty being put together, a treaty that enables us of the diaspora to be represented at the AU agency, the African Union Agency. So I'm going to put it on the screen. There we go. Put on the screen. So he spoke to us about the Pan African Treaty of the Sixth Region African Diaspora. That's what we are. Sixth Region African Diaspora. In other words, the AU recognizes our existence. Okay. To be part of the treaty, okay, you simply need to be someone of African heritage, recognizing you want to reconnect. And this, what this does, it enables you to be a part of a international dialogue of Africans of diaspora. Mhm. In fact, I need to get him back into the studio to find out how this has progressed. But if you wish to see a copy of the treaty, which I would encourage you to sign up to, it's the email address is the Pan African Treaty, African Diaspora, without the air at the end. Pan African Treaty, African Diaspora at gmail.com. It's on the screen. I commend this initiative to you. I commend this initiative to you. There you are. There you go. Again, another quick announcement before we go to the main theme of today's show, of course. Many of you will recall that we had a guest here discussing an important subject, and that is, of course, Windrush. You recall Anthony Brown was calling for a Windrush Act. Windrush, of course, the Windrush scandal is, of course, an example where Parliament here in Britain, as a series of legislative decisions, remove the legal status of those heroes and heroines. Yeah, those, if I may use them, those in the vanguard, as it were, who responded to the call from Britain that they needed workers. So they went to the Caribbean and parts of Africa to recruit people to work here in Britain. And the advantage of them, of course, that under the 1948 Act, they were essentially British, and indeed they spoke English. Yeah, it's true. So hundreds of thousands of people from the Caribbean, and remember these are small islands, so a significant brain drain from the Caribbean in particular to Britain occurs. My parents were amongst them. Yes, yeah. But yet, over the period of time, we're now talking about late 50s, early 60s now, yeah? But over a period of time, their legal status was removed by Parliament. And as it was Parliament that caused this disruption, it is Parliament that should put it right. So Anthony Brown is calling for the Windrush Act. Now, those of you affected by Windrush, okay, I want to first of all give note to the Windrush Legal Advice Clinic. They're based in 58 Bank Street in the West Midlands here in England. Postcode WV148PD. Email address, it's info at Windrush Legal Advice Clinic. Telephone number 01902 382 542. Utilize the Windrush Legal Advice Clinic. they are a worthy organization to give promotion to. Those of you affected by Windrush, we urge you to seek out your legal rights. But equally, Anthony Brown and the campaign for the Windrush Act continued up with a pace. We're calling for a Windrush Act. Actions speak louder than words. The time for action is now. Translate our words into action. Contact WD Legal. The website address is www.wdlegal.co.uk. Join the campaign to secure the Windrush Act. Together, we will make the difference. Anthony Brown, thank you for your service to the community. Thank you. And we need to get him back into the studio, hopefully sometime in November. Okay, well done you. Well done you. Well done you. Very important actions. We are never going to give up. We will never give up. Well done you. Well done you. Well done you. And my last announcement, and this is one which I think is, you know, it's heart wrenching. First of all, let me put it on the screen. This is FGM, female genital mutilation. I've spoken to women who've had this procedure, forgive me, this mutilation done to their bodies, because it's physically actually changing a woman's body. I hear in some quarters this is some cultural purification exercise. Until, of course, you see the women themselves, speak to the women themselves, and the impact this mutilation has had on them, on their bodies, therefore their lives. I'm really appealing to the men, because if we fully understood the physical and psychological impact FGM has on a woman's body, we would not want it to happen. I'm more than convinced the vast majority of men, if they really understood the impact this mutilation to a woman's body can have, they would not allow it to happen. Because why would you allow it to happen to someone you love, you care for which you have empathy for? You would not do so. And I've spoken to women who confided in me, and there is no doubt that this is a heinous act. Yes, I'm saying it. It is a heinous act. Those of you who wish to argue that is a bit of culture and tradition that they're following, and wish to and are confident enough to have that debate with us here in public, I urge you to reach out to me. Okay? I urge you to reach out to me. But here you are. I want to commend Councillor Naima Ali. Okay? She is the founder of Unshackled Duma. Unshackled Duma is a Southwark based in here in London, that empowers women and girls, particularly from Black, Asian, so-called minority, ethnic, and Muslim communities. The organization focuses on promoting self-empowerment, autonomy, and advocacy, with a strong emphasis on combating female genital mutilation, FGM. It raises awareness about FGM's harmful effects and supports survivors and works towards eradicating the practice. Yeah, that's an important word. Survivors. Yeah, survivors. They are survivors. Because some of the testimonies I've heard are just heart wrenching. Absolutely heart wrenching. Absolutely heart wrenching. And I urge you to reach out to Councillor Naima Ali. Remember, the recording of this podcast is there on YouTube. You can go back to it again and again. But if you're unsure, simply write to us here at the studio and we'll send you her contact details. I commend this work as being essential work for the community. And of course, my last announcement before we go into the main theme for today's show is that the Motivator Show is going to Burkina Faso. Yes, we are going to visit Burkina Faso. And you could join us if you so wish. Why not join us? Okay, let me put the details on the screen. There you go. There we go. We're going to Burkina Faso on the 26th of January to the 9th of February. Okay, and if you wish to join us, here is the email address. It's the future is Burkina Faso at outlook.com. More details will be shared with you. Okay, it will be an important trip. I urge you not to listen to the international press. Yep, don't listen to them. See with your own eyes, experience through your own senses the majesty of this country. We want to give a big thumbs up to His Excellency, President Ibrahim Traore. Thank you, sir. Long may you continue your work. Remain focused, diligent, resolute at all times. You have our unreserved support. We say that because it's clearly evident in your short term in being in office that you have transformed this country of Burkina Faso, the land of the upright people. And indeed, we need to get the community leaders back here in this studio to discuss progress since we last interacted with them. But it is an important initiative so that we can translate words into action because success is ours for the taking. An important step forward. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for the support in this regard. Thank you all for your support. Great people, great people. And I look forward to that experience. Personal, first-hand experience. Oh my gosh, it'll be fantastic. There you go. All righty, all righty. It's now time for the main theme of today's show. Today's show really addresses the fundamental philosophy that will create unity amongst the African peoples across the African continent. Mhm. In this interview, which this is but a snippet of it, you'll see the podcast will be a 4 or 5 episode series, okay? But this is just a snippet of it for today's show, just to whet your appetite. Look thoroughly at the philosophy, the ideas surrounding Pan Africanism, which of course transcend ethnic affiliation, transcends national affiliation, transcend religious affiliation. And you could be a Pan-Africanist if you're a man or a woman. Yeah, you could be a Pan-Africanist if you're young or you're mature. You could be a Pan-Africanist regardless of your sexual orientation. You could be a Pan-Africanist even if you're not African. You can, if you are believe and ascribe to the philosophies that support Pan-Africanism. You could be a Pan-Africanist as well. And together we can all transform the world. But the interview addresses Pan-Africanism not only from a point of view of the philosophy, but from the point of view of implementation, its impact, both on the our leaders across the continent, the Caribbean and beyond, and the people, impact on the people. It is a powerful interview, trust me. We went back and forth. But these great African men, yes, in this case, you were 2 men, okay, are young men, just like President His Excellency Ibrahim Traore, young men with great leadership potential. If these 2 young men were leading at least 1 or 2 of the nations of Africa, I'm assuring you the progress that we aspire, that we so desire for Africa, would be realized. I want to thank them both. I want to thank Pigben of the Consciousness Society. Okay? He, of course, is also leading a political party in Kenya. I want to thank King Kabbalah of the African Continental Unity Party, which seeks to support Pan-Africanist organizations and parties throughout the continent in many ways. That the details will come out in the interview. But this is but a snippet, but an important snippet. Oh yeah, you will be moved. It's important for you to share the messages when the podcast, the 5-piece podcast comes out, to share those messages, important messages, because they will set the scene, not only for us here in Europe, in Britain, but for the Caribbean, the Americas, and most certainly for the continent of Africa. The youngest continent in the world, average age, I understand, is what, 18, 19 years old. Remarkably young continent, which is bubbling with incredible potential, outstanding minds. And these gentlemen are just an example of that magnificence. Never should we ever talk ourselves down. It's a tough interview for them. I did put them through a few direct questions. Oh yeah, I did. But what was important for this interview is their responses. It was clear, it was honest, it was full of conviction. Watch this space. Spread the word. Here we go. The Motivator Show. This is where success is ours for the taking. The chains have been broken.
7 ways Pan-African ideas are changing our world.
Welcome, everyone. This is the Motivator here. As you know, this is where we translate our words into action and where success is ours for the taking. It's for you to take success. Okay. They are the future of Africa, noting, of course, the average age across the continent, I believe, is 19 years old. Wow. So 2 young men who are a perfect example of Pan-Africans, both in essence and in practice. Okay, we have with us Pigman. I'm going to ask him to introduce himself and state the organization from which he comes from, and also provide some background on his name, Pigman. Because from an English point of view, it's a curious sounding name, but I know it will inform us and educate us, diasporan. Pigman, over to you.
Thank you very much. Hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I'm grateful to join this conversation today, and let me register that I'm happy to join alongside other comrades and Comrade Kabbalah, whom I give much respect to what he does, and to you, Chancellor Martin, on what you do in the reparations, which I equally appreciate. Yeah, my name is Pejino Dimwengu. Is a name I gave myself, and you know, the naming system in Africa is one of the things that you need to work on, because our parents give us name based on their beliefs and their traditions, which sometimes was influenced by the Western religion or beliefs or Islamic beliefs. So I was given a name that was appearing to be more westernized, and I made my name when I was very young. I wasn't conscious enough of this, so I didn't even know that I was making my name, and that was at a very young age. So just it appears to me that I have this name with me, which Odimwengu, which many people confuse whether it is Ghanaian name, Nigerian name, Kenyan name. But yeah, as long as you can locate it within the continent, it's African name. So I'm happy to be bearing the name with me. And I can't say much of the definitions or the meaning behind it, but just to say that one of the name I'm proud of as an African name is one of the rare name, but it also shows my early childhood consciousness that I was unconscious about, to try to rewrite what the colonial had written in my parents' head to give me a name that they had, so that I could have a name that was more of African. So yeah, that's my name. Thank you very much.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. And the organization, just a little bit more about your organization, please, Pigman.
Now, my organization currently, I am a party leader and a founder of Accountability and Transparency Party, a party registered in Kenya as a political party, and whose philosophy and ideology is conscientism, rooted on the Nkrumah's philosophy and ideology. So that's the party I lead currently in Kenya. Thank you.
We'll come back to that later on. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And if I may now go over to King Kabbalah, okay, who's again been a regular guest here on the Motivator Show, and we know quite a bit about him nowadays, and wonderful books I've had the privilege to study and read. Yeah? Now, it's interesting. King Kabbalah, can I ask you to introduce yourself? Of course, I've introduced you, but I want you this time not only to introduce yourself, but to say a little bit more about the African Continental Unity Party, and indeed your own community, and maybe you want to share with us a success you've had in more recent time. What is its notable contribution to Africa? Over to you. Oh, you are muted. You are muted. We can't hear you.
Apology for that.
It's okay.
I'm sure you can hear me now.
We can. We can.
Oh, perfect. No, thank you so much, King Martin, for the opportunity that we have to be on your show again, one more time. And I send my revolutionary greetings to my brother Pigbean, who's over there. We have been in such programs a couple of times already. So I'm glad that we are reconnecting again for another edition. Yes, so my name is King Kabbalah, born in the colonial enclosure that we call the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I am currently, as we're speaking now, I'm in South Africa. So I am a member of the African Continental Unity Party, working in the communication department. I'm an author, right? Published author of 5 books now, working on my sixth one. And I'm also engineer by profession and community developer as well. So, well, about ACUP or about my community, I would say that ACUP has grown to become a, you know, a a strong voice on the continent, especially when you look at the works that we are doing in the West Africa, and the works that we are doing even in South Africa. We are here to just, to organize, the African masses, because we believe that the future of Africa is in the hands of the masses, no
Yes.
more in the hands of the elites. So we are here to organize the masses to bring about the change that we want, because we believe that the only organization that can speak for our interests is that which we have built and established for ourselves. So, well, that is a major contribution when it comes to Africa. And when it comes to my community, well, I mostly struggle with the how to define my community as a Congolese community, because that is how the Western men defined me. And today, if I have to speak for a community, then I look at what the Congo was before the arrival of Western men. Then you look at Angola, you look at Congo Brazzaville, you look at Gabon, you look at all those countries that were part of the Congo Kingdom, up to Cameroons, even South Africa. All those. This whole region was at some point part of the Congo Kingdom, so to say. So, well, the contribution is very much huge. The cultural richness of Africa that we know today. Even after the colonialism, we know people such as Patrice Lumumba and their contribution to Pan Africanism, as well as Theophilo Benga. If you know Sheikh Anta Diop, definitely you know Theophilo Benga, who was next to Sheikh Anta Diop in Egypt to overturn the Western paradigm that was dominating scientific world in terms of Egypt and its contribution to civilization, to knowledge, and
Hmm.
to science. So I
Hmm.
think the contribution is rich, actually, and as I said, I don't want to limit myself to
Okay.
what
Okay. Okay.
the community, the Western has given me, but I look at the whole region
Hmm.
as it was before the arrival of Western men. So, well, that's what
Yeah.
I can say for now. Thank you so much. Looking
That's fine.
forward to
That's
the
fine.
engagement.
And thank you for that. It is interesting, and uh, it's interesting because more recently we've had to hear on the Motivator show look closely at Nigeria and the peoples of Nigeria. And I was struck by the term tribe is typically used, but my more recent guest pointed out no, we're not a tribe, we are a nation. We were a nation before 1875, whatever it is. Yeah, we were nations. You know, we were not tribes. We were nations, and these nations had at land. Okay, but the nation's land was not respected by Europeans, and they carved up into use to create new nations. So we have Nigeria. Yeah, we have the Democratic Republic of the Congo. We have Angola, but they're not our nations. So it's interesting as you describe it. What you're describing, of course, King Kabbalah, is a nation, yeah, which extends across that part of the continent. Okay. What I note, of course, what you didn't say, and neither one of you have said, and I want to address the issue of Pan Africanism in promoting African unity. Mhm. I think about this, and as part of my preparation, I look to see if there are continental unities examples in other places. Okay, so of course I'm based here in Asia. I say Asia deliberately. I'm in the Euro part of Asia. Mhm. Okay, uh, I'm based in London, but technically, I could walk from London to Beijing, because all part of the same continental plate. Mhm. But that in mind, there is no record of continental unity here in Asia. There are regional conurbations. China is a regional conurbation of nations. India is a good example of it. Russia is a good example of it, and it goes on. There isn't examples of continental unity. So I want to put this to you, because this is one of the first tenets of Pan-Africanism, that is continental integration and collective sovereignty. In a continent where there is no history of continental sovereignty, continental integration, is it pie in the sky for Pan Africanists to strive for African unity, which involves the collective sovereignty, continental integration of all the states? Is that pie in the sky or not? Let me start with you, Pickman, if I may. Let's start with you first of all.
I thought you could start with Kabbalah, but it's okay. Yeah, you
I
see,
okay, go ahead.
the
Yeah.
dream of a unified continent is
Mm-hmm.
a dream that has existed for the longest period possible. We have refused, due to some other challenges in the past, to make it a reality. But that doesn't mean that it can't be a reality.
Okay.
So we are actually, you take it back from Marcus Garvey Cole, the
Mm-hmm.
back to Africa.
Mm-hmm.
But it was unfortunate that the back to Africa was seen from African diaspora, where the African in the continent are not struggling also to take back Africa. Because we have two struggles here. The struggle of the black community, the global black community, to be back to Africa. And there's a struggle for the Africans to take over control of Africa. Because you see, we then attain the so-called independence. And that independence was not total independence.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, some people, several have mentioned, It was a symbolic independence, but not the actual independence.
Yes.
Now, then, the Africa continent, since the period of independence up to date, is still not in the hand of Africans, even in the continent. And therefore, the unification of Africa is still being affected by the element and the fact that the Africa continent is not in the hand of Africans. Not to say that it is not led politically by Africans, but to allude to the element that it is fully controlled by the former neocolonial masters or whatever the world economic big powers in the continent. What then we call and Nkrumah called the neo-colonialism. It is not different with colonialism. It's just a new form of colonialism. So the key struggle is that the Africans in the continent must wake up, first of all, to take back African control of Africa. In that way, they can sit down in AU and their decisions will count if they say we unify Africa. But when they have to sit down in AU and the decision has to be qualified by the former neocolonial masters or to be in line with the Western global powers, and not only Western, today even the Eastern is playing to this game. So it is very important that in the process of unification, the liberation comes first. The liberation is very fundamental to the unification. And what Nkrumah then explained in the book Consciousism, that the liberation is very important, what you call the liberated territory, what you call the positive actions. So when the positive actions outweigh negative actions, because you cannot completely do away with the negative actions, which means the counter-revolutionary forces. You cannot completely dismantle them. But you need to flip the coin so that the positive action, which is the reactionary and revolutionary forces, are higher than the negative actions. If you do that, then you can have a dominant progressive force across the continent, which can then liberate a territory. If such territory are liberated, then you can move towards what you call the unification of liberated territory, what the Sahel is now advancing. So it is very important that we must recognize that in the process of unification of Africa, the liberation of Africa is very fundamental so that we can have the power. If you sit today as a president of Kenya and say Kenya is going to unite with Uganda, and you can do it without any other forces to influence it. So that's what we call the liberation. So the liberation of Africa is one that we must fight for. And I think Nkrumah even cautioned that when he talked about the Ghana thing, the independence of Ghana, which could appear like a liberation process. But he said it was meaningless unless it brings the positive group action. So from individual positive action to a collective group action, like what now the Sahel is advancing. So you have a Burkina, you have Niger, and then you're moving to a group. That is the only way you can safeguard. That's why you see the forces that are not yet liberated are having problem with that unification. So we cannot move forward. So we need a total liberation of the continent to take control of the continent so that we can unify it. That's what I can say for now.
Thank you, thank you. I most certainly will come back to some of those points. But can I just go to you, King Kabbalah, and how do you respond to my assertion that there is no history of continental-wide integration, or indeed collective sovereignty? So is it pie in the sky for Pan-Africanists to strive for African unity? Over to you.
All right. No, thank you so much for the question. So I think mostly when we want to assess the unity of Africa, we mostly use the want to assess it through the lenses of Western institutions and Western thinking, because we want to see in the past, to see institutions, political institutions all over the continent that we can assess and say, okay, this means that Africans were united, politically speaking. But I think we need to understand.
Forgive me, my king. Just to be clear, and to keep this part of our discussion really tight. Of course, I'm referring to must work together politically, economically, and culturally. Yep, that's that part of it. Politically, economically, and culturally. That's what it's been asserted to achieve African unity and collective sovereignty, political, economic, and cultural integration. Is that pie in the sky? Do you want to make sure? Because that's not Western or Eastern. That's simply a sociological fact, isn't it? So, over to you.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm talking
Mm.
about because
Aha. Okay.
we want to determine or to believe that Africa was united before or not, if we can look in the past and see institutions like the WTO that Europeans have today. So basically, we use the world views of European thinkers to judge the historical reality of Africa. But what I'm trying to say is being an African is first and foremost cultural, as you've said yourself, is also
Yes.
physical, is also
Yes.
spiritual, and it can be also economic. Now, from the economic point of view, the question is, were there trade on the continent before the arrival of white Western people? If there were
Mhm.
trade, it simply means that there was economic unity on the continent. And when you come to a point where you see you have economic unity, you definitely have political unity because we do politics to defend our economic interest. So you cannot have economic you cannot have the economy without politics. They go together. So
Mhm.
when it comes to culture, you see in Southern Africa, you see the kings dressed in leopard skin. Uh, that's a basic symbol of of king of power
Mhm.
in the Zulu people in the Southern
Mhm.
Africa, and you see the same thing in Central Africa in the Congo. It tells me that there was cultural unity on the continent. You look all across the continent, you see the use of totemic names in Cameroon. You see their national team and all the political or symbols they use totemic. They use animals, right? You see the same
Mhm.
thing in Ghana. You see all these things, spread across the continent. It tells me that there was cultural unity, right, on the continent. So we don't have to look for institutions such as the WTO, World Health Organizations in the past to assess that African were united or not. We see cultural unity through the
Was it
symbols, the
cultural? Is it
totemic
cultural
names of.
unity? Forgive me, King. Is cultural unity or influences? Because I can tell that we can be influenced by others in terms of our practices, but
Well,
unity
influence.
implies.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, well, of course, influence and unity is different because
Hmm.
when you see the meaning that is given to the leopard, like in a Zulu
Hmm.
kingdom, by those kings who are using them, and the meaning that has been given in Congo, for example, you see
Hmm.
that there's a something, is a something, and you trace them to the ancient Egypt, right? You see that they do have the same significance, right?
Hmm.
Others they're using lion, like in Cameroon, they're using lion. Other they're using eagles. So the
Hmm.
totemic name is not just like a result of influence. It has a deep meaning in every culture, in every people who are using these totems. So,
Okay.
and the other concept that we call Ubuntu, when you look
Yes.
across the continent, you will see not just the use of the name, but you will see actually in the villages where people have never even traveled abroad, you will see that there's the functioning of the Ubuntu itself, whereby you can walk in a village and the day night falls upon you, you knock at any door, they open for you, they don't ask you where you're coming from, where is your passport, they give you food,
Hmm.
they give you water. You can see the same thing in Cameroon, you can see the same thing in Congo, you can see the same thing in all the villages. If the rain falls upon you, somebody will open their doors, you go inside. You see even the spiritual aspect of it on the continent,
Hmm.
right? In Benin, in Congo, what Western people will call witchcraft or, I
Yes.
don't know, demonic things, we see that
Hmm.
same expression all over the continent. So, in brief, in my mind, I believe that Africa was united culturally speaking, physically speaking, we were united because we are all black people.
Hmm.
Politically speaking, we were united because we were able to trade among ourselves. We're able
Hmm.
to do commerce, to trade among ourselves.
Hmm.
And politically, even though not expressed in the way that the Western man would want us to be, to express our political unity. Because we have to understand that even the struggle that we are doing today, we are using the Western tools to express ourselves, to express our thoughts. That's why it becomes difficult to properly judge the institutions that we had in the past, because we are using the lenses of Western people to judge what Africa was. And it's difficult for us to really determine whether we were one people or not. So, of course, there were conflicts here and there, but conflict is part of family. The same family people have conflicts, but the the foundation of every culture, whether you go in West Africa, in East Africa, in Central Africa, you would see that the foundation of these cultures were made from the very same fabric of Ubuntu, right? Which means cooperation, interdependence, relying on each other, whereby you look behind you, you see the success that you have realized, you see the fingerprint of your community in that success, of your family in that success, which is unlike to what the Western people have brought us, that you have to rely on the democracy, you have to rely on foreign aid, you have to rely on entrepreneurs who will come and give you a job. You don't have to depend on your community and your family. So I think we have to understand that from a historical perspective. And when we call for unity today, it's not just something new, as Brother Pygmine said. Even when you look in ancient Egypt, when tough times arrived, there's a concept that is called sematawi. That concept, comes from somewhere. It comes from the idea of uniting, the whole Egypt, the Upper Egypt and the Lower Egypt, and especially when the people found themselves in a time of difficulties. So today, when we talk about Pan-Africanism or uniting the continent. We don't necessarily mean we have to go back in the past, right? So we don't even mean that we have to unite as we were united in the past. No, this is a contingency measure to liberate ourselves. As brother has just said, the idea today, or the ideal, is the liberation, and the key that we have to liberate ourselves is unity. And that is where I guess I depart a little bit from Brother Pigbean analysis, because in his expose, I think uh, he presents that the liberation must come first before we can unite. But I think if today Congo is liberated, Congo will never have a need to unite again, with other countries. The reason why we seek to unite is because we want the power of unity, the power that unity brings to us so that we can liberate ourselves. So, in other words, unity is not the end goal for Africa. Unity is the tool that we use to liberate ourselves. Because Congo, it will never liberate itself. It's not that it doesn't have the power to liberate itself from imperialism. Nigeria cannot liberate itself. Ghana cannot liberate itself. Is when we come together, we bring our efforts, our little efforts together, then we are able to then liberate ourselves. So it means unity comes first and then liberation comes after. But if one
Okay.
of us is liberated, there's no need to unite. That's why you see, for
Okay.
example, in South Africa, people have a tendency to believe that they don't need to unite with other countries because they believe that they're already liberated, even though
Liberated.
it is a fake liberation. But let me end there to progress. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very useful segue. If I go back to, I'm going to say Comrade Pickman. Huh? It is true. It is an interesting analysis. What's your reaction? I've got a reaction, but what's your reaction to what you've just heard? That uh, the liberation is not is not achievable unless you have unity amongst the people first. Okay, I think what King Abad is describing, of course, that liberation, when you have this economic liberation, you then don't believe you need to uh, unite with other Africans or your neighbors, your neighbors any longer, because you are now liberated, you're free. It is it is a fanciful idea in so many ways. Uh, you know, freedom is not something that one believes is for themselves. Freedom is only achieved, at least if you are Pan Africanist, when we are collectively free. All peoples must be free, not just us, me. How do you react to that term? Because I'm very conscious of the consciousness and Nkrumah's and his philosophy. and I've got a copy of it here. So I'm interested to hear how you respond, and I might quote directly from Nkrumah immediately after you. How about that? Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, thank you.
Mm,
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah,
can. We
you
can.
see, there's a level of unification.
Okay.
The type of the unity we are talking about is continental unity.
Hmm.
Yes, unity and liberation goes together at some level, but one is fundamental. So let's take it because in there's a unity of territories. When you talk of consciousness, when you look at the last chapter of that, Nkrumah present unity of territories, which means for Congo to be liberated, it requires the unity of the nations in Congo, and not only the unity of the nations in Congo, it requires some ideological message or revolutionary message that can unify the Congolese, so that the Congolese can be united behind an ideology or a message or a revolutionary point. If they unite, they can defeat neocolonialism in Congo. So at that particular moment, the basis for their liberation as Congo is the unity of the Congolese. And that unity must be informed with some revolutionary ideologically message that unify them. Because you see, our territories exist with nations, so-called tribes. So even attaining the internal unity within the territory is an issue. So you cannot liberate that territory at that particular moment before you liberate the minds of the tribes or the nations on that country. So when you unify the people of Congo through a message, that message has liberated their minds so that their minds do not look at their skin color, their gender, or their so-called tribe. Their minds is free from those so-called influences that were put in their mind to divide them. You see? So then the message liberates the mind. When the message liberates the mind, then the people can unite because now they are speaking the same message or the same language. When they unite as Congolese, they can defeat neocolonialism in Congo to liberate Congo. That is
Forgive
at
me,
a territory level.
forgive me, comrade. I want to do this in bite-sized chunks for this particular segment, so it's understood by the masses. Okay. Clearly, political theories are communicated to the masses. Okay. But political theories running alongside cultural traditions, okay, can often find that there's some conflict. Am I right? Because of course, I'm conscious of the many nations that make up the Congo. I'm conscious of the many nations that make up Kenya. Indeed, more recently, I'm very conscious of the many nations that make up Nigeria, for example. Okay, all right. Now, if those nations take a political position, okay, uh, but have not integrated the cultural traditions, that is a conflict in itself. And I was about to quote from the book in a moment. Is that not a conflict, and therefore will hinder political integration? Because you haven't, first of all, arrived at a cultural integration?
Now, the problem is that we want to put cultural integration vis-a-vis political. You know, in the simple definition of culture, culture is the way of life. Simple. And that way of life include politics, social, economic. So culture embodies everything. Politics is not out of culture. Because when you say in our culture and traditions, this is what we do.
Mhm,
In our
mhm,
culture, this is what we do. So
mhm,
politics, economics, and social welfare should be seen as elements of culture, not as a separate element within the culture. So if you look at it like when you say, what is the culture of Africans?
mhm,
What is the way of living of Africans? And you can say our way of living can be defined politically, economically, socially, and any other way you want to define it. So,
mhm,
what I say is that, irrespective of the practices, which you can call traditions or the norms or whatever things you want to call them, the rituals or any other thing you want to call them,
mhm,
irrespective of those different elements, they are then influenced by the forces that have been brought in either to divide our political element of our culture, our economic element of our culture, or our social element of our culture that has been intentionally been brought up to divide us culturally. So what I was saying is that when the message liberates the mind, because irrespective of our culture, there is no culture that embraces suffering, oppression, and all these things we go through as a people, which means, irrespective of the skin color, your name, your gender, if we have a revolutionary message that speaks to your basic need, what then consciousness call it materialism. If you have a message that focuses on your material well-being, which means how you feed, how you sleep, how you eat, and everything else on how we can improve your welfare, then the people will unite behind that message, irrespective of their tribe. Because there's no tribe or nation that don't want to develop. There's no tribe or nation that want to be oppressed forever. So when the message is sent, what then was sung back then? Liberate the mind from the mental slavery. So when the message is sent to the mind, the message liberates the mind, and the message unifies the minds that are liberated. And in that way, the country like Congo can then be liberated. But once it is liberated, then there's a need for those liberated minds to come together. The same way the three of us are here. We are at some level liberated mentally. And then we can sit together to start discussing some advancement in terms of our unification. But if you're speaking to a mind that is not liberated, you cannot unify it. Because they're speaking this direction, they're speaking to the direction in the chains of their mind. So what I'm calling for, the second level of liberation, the continental unification, requires the liberated minds to come together. But for us to unify the country, still the message has to liberate the mind, so that the minds that are liberated can unify to then defeat neo-colonialism. So as I've said, they two go hand in hand. But at a continental level, when Congo is liberated, look for example, and I've been giving you this typical example. It's very easy today for Niger and Burkina Faso to say we can have one currency, we can have one passport, we can have one whatever military, we maybe look for one political whatever. But it's very hard for Uganda and Kenya to discuss the same, because they are not yet liberated in terms of the territory. Because when Kenya says that we want to unite with Uganda, then the British or the former neo-colonizers will start looking at the states at play. So that is what I'm speaking for. So the message liberates the mind, and the minds that are liberated unify. And when they unify, they defeat neo-colonialism. Then when they defeat neo-colonialism, for them to protect themselves, they need to join forces of other unified forces so that they are not toppled. You see, when we have been having reverse revolution, when Patrice Lumumba liberated Congo, they were toppled. When Nkrumah liberated Ghana, he was toppled. When Sankara did it, he was toppled because other territories were not liberated. So it is incumbent that we liberate the entire continent if we can be able to achieve and sustain our unity as a continent. That's what I'm talking about.
You. I hear you, we hear you and understand. I just wanted to introduce this. We've got maybe 5 minutes on this particular theme. I wanted to introduce these additional elements. The traditional leaders I've had here on the Motivator Show, I've always stressed that they are traditional leaders, they're cultural leaders, they're not politicians. Okay, how do you integrate them into the idea of African unity if they strive to avoid being seen as of being politicians? Okay, and then secondly, um, I want to introduce this and part of the dialogue going forward, the role of women in this process, and of course the importance of preparing young people. Okay, I just need you both just to speak to those elements: traditional leaders, the role of women, and how we integrate young people into this thinking. So over to you, Kinkabala, first of all.
Yes, so I think traditional leaders have a very important role to play in Africa because I do consider them as the custodians of our culture, of our norms and traditions, and that's the reason why they are called the traditional leaders. And we have departed from that aspect of things because when Western men came to Africa, he convinced us that they don't have important role to play He then promoted your MPs, your deputies, your these people that we go to elect, and the role of traditional leaders in that sense was kind of undermined. And even for them to survive, they had now to run to these MPs or NGOs to be given crumbs for the survival. And in most cases, you realize that now, as we're speaking, the majority of our traditional leaders have been compromised, they've been corrupt. They are the ones actually who are selling the fertile lands in our villages to these international corporations. They are the ones who are giving over the lands, the mines, to uh, these multinational corporations for exploitation, for the plunder of our resources. So the whole thing has to be revisited because we don't have to fantasize about the traditional leaders. Most of them are really compromised, as we're speaking right now. But ideally, it would be better to give certain powers on the continent to traditional leaders, especially if we talk about the concept that we have coined within the ACUP, such as inclusive democracy, which means that after you have elected your MPs, whatever decision, major decision that they study in the parliament, before that decision can be amended, it has to be brought back to the citizens, especially those who are going to be affected by by those decisions, to assess and approve
Yes.
that okay, let's this be voted as a law, or no, this cannot be
Yes.
voted for a law. For
Hmm.
example, you see, if you go to Congo, you see there's a region in the east, southeast of the Congo, which is rich in minerals, cobalt, copper, all those things. They are villages that were decimated simply because uh, the traditional leaders were actually were compromised, were corrupted, even though according to the law of the country, the customary land is in the hands of traditional leaders, and you have to access through them so that you can buy. And these minings were able to buy those lands and to remove people, entire villages, in order to exploit the resources. And after that, they leave environmental destruction, the land destituted. Now, the people who were previously relying on agriculture to feed themselves, they are no longer able to go back to agriculture because for the past, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, when the mining activities were going on, they were removed from agriculture to work in the mines, and suddenly the mines are shut down. They are no longer able to go back to mine, and even on top of that, the land is no longer fertile to produce because the environment has been destroyed by chemical activities of minings and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
I think this is a big problem with the traditional leaders. But as I said, it will be better through the what we call inclusive democracy to give some powers to our traditional leaders so that whatever the MPs study in the parliament before it get assented by the president, it get to be approved by the masses, and that can be organized with the traditional leaders in a way of a dialogue. We can have the whole village organized to have the proposal
Yes.
presented by the leaders, and the people
Understood.
have a meaningful conversation, have inputs, and from that science people can say, okay, we agree with this particular policy or not. Then we'll be able to avoid a lot of things, including lobbyists who are buying our politicians to have access into some areas, which result in the destitution of our villages and the people. And we can also have our people having the voice in the politics of their lives, because if democracy is really democracy, it has to have our voice and our opinion on matters that affects our lives.
But
So
but but but,
that's
but
what I
think
can
about
say
it.
about
But to be clear though, the vast majority I've encountered strive and emphasize that they are not political. Okay, and that's the point I was making. That if that's their position, I hear what you say about inclusive democracy. Give them some power. Okay, but if they have not absorbed the ideas of Pan Africanism, uh, that power would not be used to our collective interest. So the question still remains. It's a persistent question that I've encountered traditional leaders right across the continent, and the response is consistently the same: that they are not politicians. And you're right, they're the
Yes.
custodian of the land, custodian of the culture, they're the reciters of our history, and so on. Okay, they're not politicians. Okay, so how do you integrate them? How does this how does this democratic framework you describe work? And are you able to point to examples? That would be really helpful. Mhm.
Okay. Let's go to Brother Pigbean as he was
Okay,
defining culture. He said
okay,
culture is the ways of life, and that
yes.
includes political, economic, and social life of the
Hmm.
people. So if you
Hmm.
tell me that these people are traditional or cultural leaders, but they are not
Hmm.
politicians, it's a contradiction with the
Okay,
basis of the culture itself. So
good.
I
Hmm.
think we have to revolutionize every. That's why we talk about revolution on the continent. All these things is a framework that the western have imposed on us, so we are coming with the revolution. So traditional leaders must be given the power, political power, to get
Hmm.
involved in the lives of the society, because because you cannot tell me that these people are traditional leaders but they don't have political power. It doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
So of course we
Hmm.
will have to give them the power, the political power, so that
Hmm.
they can take part in the political life of the country.
Okay,
That's
right.
it.
Okay, thank you, thank you. And the other two elements, very, very quickly, no more than a minute or so, please, is women's role, and of course, how to prepare young people. King Kabbalah. Now, go to you, Pigman.
So uh now, I mean, I have to refer to Dr. John Henry Clark that said any liberation agenda which exclude women is failed from the beginning.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
you cannot have Africa that we are dreaming of to be materialized if we leave our women behind.
Indeed.
So women have a very important role to play,
Yes.
and we know this because of their strong emotion.
Hmm.
Emotion is sometimes in a Western perception looked as a irrational aspect of life, but it's very powerful because through emotions we can do things that reasoning mind cannot do. And I give
Hmm.
example that I was given by one of scholars in the world, that you can see in a household setting whereby a child is misbehaving. The father
Hmm.
can get tired, but the mother will never get tired because she's attached to that kid emotionally, right?
Hmm.
Even if
Hmm.
she has to sell her house to
Hmm.
bail out the child who is in prison, she can do that. But
Hmm.
the fathers will have to think twice or three times. Say, no, man, we have told this
Hmm.
guy for many times, doesn't listen. So that very emotion,
Hmm.
when it is brought within the struggle of Pan-Africanism for the liberation
Hmm.
of the continent, we can do a
Powerful.
lot of things. And even historically speaking, Dr. John Henry Clark said that every time in Africa when a woman was in power, Africa was peaceful. There were no wars, there were no trouble on the continent. But every time that men got into power, there were war, chaos, and all those things, right? I'm reminded about a queen, I think in Ethiopia, Candice. This queen,
Okay.
she was leading the army during the time when the Roman were actually invading Ethiopia in the past, and she was struck in the eye with the eye hanging out, but she was able to fight Romans like a hell, even though her eye was out, to the point where Romans apparently they won that war, but they had to ask for ceasefire and to leave the country. Said, no, no, we cannot occupy this place the way that we were fought against. Who led that was a woman. So I think
Hmm.
women have a
Hmm.
very important role, because every
Okay.
time you bring the female and male energy together, you have
Yes.
life. You have life,
Yes.
you have progress, you
Yes.
have development,
Yes.
everything that we want to see in the world. So women
Hmm.
don't have to occupy the back seat. They have to be in the forefront, just like all of us, so that we can fight and win this battle.
And young people, how to integrate young people, the idea of African unity. Last element. King
Yes,
Kabbalah.
young
Mm.
people, you want me to respond to that?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Of
Yes.
course. Youth stands for two things: energy and a future, which simply means that young people represent the energy that will drive Africa to the future.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
if also you exclude young people from the struggle, then you exclude the potential of having the future that we want, because we all die at some point. So the only people that can work as extension of us, of our struggle, of ideology, so forth and so on, is the young people. So they are the integral part of our struggle. And if you look at it closely, you will see that the future of Africa is now in the hands of young people. The elders, in most cases, have deceived us. They are the ones who, in most cases, I want to say, in most cases, because you are elder, I don't think that you are you have deceived us. You are doing a great work every day, but the majority of them have deceived us. They are what Marcus Garvey said, that if you go to any nation, you find that they have sellouts. But the sellouts on all these nations are the people who have been excluded from opportunities, disenfranchised, impoverished. But when you come to Africa, the sellouts are among the elders, among the leaders, and among the well positioned, socially, economically speaking. So we have been deceived. And the only way we can serve the continent today is when this generation Z can really stand up as it has stood up, but also begin to organize continentally, and even with the diaspora, we'll be able to see the Africa the way that we want it to be. Otherwise, we're going to be see the same situation like in Cameroon, where a 92-year-old is still running for power, even though he cannot remember his name or remember his stuff. But this is awkward situation simply because the young people in Cameroon have not yet said their last word.
Thank you for that. Pigman, can I ask you the same question, of course, and to be clear that the traditional leaders, in my experience, and I've spoken to traditional leaders across the continent, universally have said that they're not politicians. That's my first question. The role of women in the campaign towards Africa unity is really important. I'd like to hear your response, and of course, how to integrate young people into the process. Over to you.
Now, thank you, and I like the response by my brother Kabbalah. Now,
So do I.
Chancellor Martin, kindly ask those traditional leaders who told them they're not political.
Mm-hmm.
Who told them that they're not political? Because that's the first thing we need to know. Because you see, who are the traditional leaders representing? Are they not the citizens of a country? Who is the politician, so-called elected member of parliament representing? Is it not also including that traditional leader? Do the traditional leaders in Africa set up don't have a right to vote? They vote. And when you vote, you are no longer saying you are apolitical. Any moment you participate in an election, you're political already. And you know that, Chancellor Martin. Now, politics, in the definition of my campus, was also made very simple. It was defined as being argument. Just argument and discussions on policies, whatever you want to argue about. Even in church, there's politics. When you bring any argument, it's political already. So it's politics. So the element of seeing politics as a separate unit is an issue here. One thing that I would propose is that the traditional leaders must be included in the decision-making process. I know they vote. The chiefs, the so-called whatever, vote in those countries. They vote in elections. I know they do. And there's no constitution that limits them from doing that. But rather, we only need their wisdom in governance of the country. Apart from their vote, there's a need for their wisdom, which means if you are in a national government, the president of a country need to set up a council of elders, the same way you have the council of ministers, where you can actually share with them and involve them in the process of decisions and policy of a country. That one will be very important, because there's one thing that the technocrats and politicians will miss, but the elders have the wisdom to give you. So that's what I feel they should be integrated in that level, in terms of the decision. And those decisions must include all levels, be it in the village level, the constituency level, the national level. We need to set up a group of council of elders. And that's what our accountability and transparency in party in Kenya is trying to propose. So we only need to involve them in the decision process, but they are not apolitical, they are political. Now, when you talk of women, I'll quote what Sankara said. Sankara says that women hold the other half, and that there's no true liberation without the liberation of women. So, and he goes ahead to say that women liberation is not a charity. Now, let me just put it plain. How can you not champion the liberation of your mother? The woman is your mother.
Well said.
How do you discuss the future of yourself without your mother, who has brought you to earth to think of that future? So women are part and parcel of the future. In fact, they are giving birth to the future through us and their children.
Yes.
So women are the greatest stakeholder in that future. And they must be involved not as a charity, but as the basis and the foundation of any future of a country. And that they must be integrated. But one thing they must also understand, they must be ready, the same way the youth must. They must be ready to steer ahead the conversation. And that goes to the youth question you've asked me. The youth should not demand to be involved. The youth should drive the future. In fact,
Ah,
they should now involve the elders in the conversation, but not asking for them to be involved in the conversation. They form the highest percentage of the continent, and they must now drive the future and only include other people to be involved. So it's not the other way around that they are fighting to be included in the future. They must now be the one driving the future and include others to that future. Because the future they talk about, if you say youth are the future, that future must be built today. So they must lead that discussion towards the future they want to be. And that's what I can say about that.
thank you, thank you. And it's very, I think that's all very clear now. For those who are uninitiated, I think you've used terms that we can all understand. And I hope traditional leaders who are watching this podcast understand how crucial the role they will play in us achieving African unity. Okay? Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Can I take us now on to our second question, only second question, which is, of course, really focused on the second tenet is self determination. You talked about unity, okay, amongst the people, okay. But of course, self determination, of course, means that taking responsibility. Uh-huh. Now, freedom of Africa from colonialism and neo-colonialism, words you've used already when referencing unity, okay, but also from foreign domination. Now, it has been a while. The continent has been dominated by foreign powers, not for 10 years, not even for hundreds of years, but for hundreds of years, possibly even in some cases thousands of years. Okay. Is it realistic to expect that nations would have been dominated by foreign powers for so long will be able to take on the ideas of self determination as is required under Pan Africanism? Is it reasonable? Freedom of African peoples from colonialism, old colonialism, neo colonialism that you described, and foreign domination. Is that a reasonable expectation? Again, I ask the question, is it simply pie in the sky? King Kabata, how would you respond to that question?
Well, thank you for the question. And I think the first thing that I want to say is that human beings are different from ants. Ants are born with their culture, their tradition, their instincts. You can take one ant outside of the colony, put it in a different place, it will be able to replicate the ant culture, the ant habits, and all those things, the same systems in which it was moved out of. However, human beings are different, are very uh, I don't. It can be can be tamed in whichever way you want. You take a human being out of his community, put him in a bush, he will behave like a dogs in that bush. Will behave like a monkeys. He won't behave. He won't be able to behave like a human being. So it means even though we have been dominated for thousands of years, new colonized, it's only matter of culture change, and that's why Comrade Pigbin was talking about consciencism. The aim is to recreate the software, the operating system of an African to begin
Mhm.
thinking, but most importantly
Mhm.
of the younger generation, because as Frederick Douglass said it, it's easy to raise strong children than to change a broken man. So
Absolutely.
from that first question, I would say it's very possible to recreate a new culture of resistance, a new culture of fight, a new culture of freedom fighters that will enable Africa to be transformed, to become the Africa that we want. And that is a kind of an intergenerational agenda that we have to to come out to put in our mind. It's not something that we do today, and we expect change tomorrow. Now, about self-determination, I reminded about Kwame Ture, who say that every people who aspire to be free, who are free, must be able to create their own concepts, their own words, and make those words accepted by other people. That is the beginning of self-determination and freedom.
Yes.
Those who are free are those who are able to make their own terms and make those terms accepted by other people. And whenever enemy comes to destroy you, they don't destroy your gold first, they don't destroy your diamonds, they don't destroy your house. The first thing that they want to take away from you is the power to define your own terms. When they take away from you that power, then they begin to impose on you their own terms. That's why today we are Congolese. Who made us Congolese? The enemy.
Indeed.
Today we are James, John, Francois in Africa. Who gave us those names? Today we are fighting for democracy, a concept that we barely understood. Who gave us those concepts? Who gave us those terms? Right? So I think self-determination for Africa is actually the essence of African identification, because that's where it has to begin. It has to begin by identifying ourselves in the way that we see fit, not in the way that the international community agree with, or in the way that the World Bank agrees with, or in the world that the United States of America agrees with. So I think this battle is very complex and very difficult, but is feasible, is made of changing the culture change. Once we adopt a new culture of people who are willing to be free, it means people who are creating now their own terms and make those terms accepted by other people, is the beginning of the journey. As brother said that he changes his name. That's the first thing that you want to do, right? You don't want to change the whole nation. Just begin with yourself. How do you identify yourself? How do you determine yourself? Right? And that goes through me, through other people, all the influences that we have. And at the end of the day, we find ourselves in a community of people who know who they are, not because the enemy has told them to be, but because they've determined to be who they are. And from that moment, they can decide what money we can use, what economic system or policy we can use, and what the price we can put on our commodities. Because even now, we don't fix price of our commodities, of our raw materials. It's Western men who fix the price of those things through the institutions that he created. So we are lacking behind in terms of self-determination. And this is where I blame our leaders. And I'm questioning myself every day. What is so difficult for Ibrahim Traore today, for General Chani today, for Assimi Goita to wake up in the morning to say, okay, you know what? To hell with Burkina Faso. Let's make this a Sahel nation once and for all. What is so difficult for them to do that? And I'm seeing them falling in the very same trap that Kwame Nkrumah warned us and in 1963. As if we get comfortable with these positions, with these titles, it's going to be difficult for us to think about African unity. And who gave us those titles? The same Western men. Even though you want liberation, but who gave you the title of that president, minister in your country? So we are far behind the level at which we should be able to self-determine ourselves as African people. When you move from there, you go into other countries such as Kenya, uh, Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, all these countries, even Congo. I'm not talking about the people, our people are innocent, but I'm talking about the leaders in those countries. They are still positioning themselves, writing their CVs to be agents of European influence. In other words, the United States project itself to become or to remain the superpower in the world through influence on other nations. And then African nations, African leaders positions themselves as agents of your American influence. It means they still are unable to self-determine themselves. And that influence always manifests itself in the destruction of their neighbors. It becomes like competition. Rwanda wants to become better than Congo through the destruction, the plunder of the resources. Uganda wants to become better than Kenya through all these things, right? So I think self determination is the first step that we have to make to embark in the liberation agenda. As far as I'm concerned, right now, I feel like Africans have not done much in that aspect. And this is where people like Conscientism class that Brother Pigbin gives, the Free Minded Academy that we also give, are very important initiatives to help ourselves to realize, or help our people to realize that, okay, we need a cultural change, we need the mindset change, and we need to begin embarking on that agenda of self-determination. Let me stop here.
Thank you. And there you have it. That was just a snippet of what was a 3.5 hour panel discussion. It'll be organized into a podcast series. Next 48 hours, it'll be on the Motivator Show YouTube channel for you to view. It was truly an intellectually, spiritually enlightening experience. You could see those young men grappling with the big issues that affects us all, big issues that most people, shy away from, but they are taking on these issues head on with conviction, a desire to improve their circumstances, their family circumstances, their community circumstances, indeed, Africa's circumstances, and therefore all Africans' circumstances. And together we can transform the world. That was just a snippet. So watch this space. Now, if you are in receipt of our WhatsApp messages, okay, uh, you watch out for the podcast announcements. But if you're not, I would encourage you to send an email to the Motivator Show, and we'll add you to our WhatsApp messaging. Okay. That was truly an inspirational experience, and you've only seen a snippet. I know presidents, prime ministers, chief kings, queens, and other traditional leaders will watch that podcast with interest. Okay? You heard what was said in relation to our traditional leaders, how important their role will be in realizing the true Pan African vision for Africa, African unity. It's essential that they play their part in the process. Okay, the question of whether they're political or not is still for debate, but I believe these two towering upright men were able to elaborate and explain the importance of traditional leaders. They, of course, emphasize there's no process of this type, no vision that is Pan Africanist, or indeed visions generally, can be successful without women playing a essential part in the process. Women are essential. You're not sidelined. You're not on the side watching in. You are essential. Women are essential to the process. Okay. So we will have women participating in what will be a much broader podcast series discussing Pan Africanism. So we can have that feminine perspective, because there'll be subtle differences, slight different emphasis, but it's an important complement to the masculine perspective. Absolutely essential. And I want to emphasize there can be no progress without women being an active and full participant in the process. And of course, as Kinkabala and indeed Pigment made it clear, young people, the youth, will drive the, the process towards African unity. Those are young men. They will drive the, the process towards African unity. Okay. The future is bright if we have such people as this in our in our midst. They are a clear example of the enormous intellectual prowess, yeah, the creative endeavors, yeah, the compassion, the wisdom that exists amongst young people through their almost visceral experiences. You heard what he said about us more mature types, you know? I couldn't contradict him. I could not contradict him, King Kabbalah. It was direct language, yeah? It was direct language. It's just the elders who have been letting them down. Indeed, because their experience is the result of the elders' works. So it is a right to have a critical analysis of my generation's work. Mhm. I welcome that analysis, and I don't mind being criticized because I can. I say again, I can, and I will do better for you, the youth, the young people, the next generation, and support your efforts to drive for progression forward. Praise be. There you are. This is the Motivator Show, and I trust you found that snippet of an interview helpful, insightful. Watch for the podcast, which is somewhat longer. It's 4, 5 parts. Okay, it needs to be curated. Will the references made by those two brothers will be on screen, references to the personalities, to the events, to the circumstances outlined by them will be evidence on screen as part of the podcast. It'll be an additional dimension, which I know you will find intellectually and spiritually rewarding. And together, we will all make the difference because this is the Motivator Show. This is where we translate our words into action and where success is ours for the taking. If you're in doubt, I say to you all, if you're in doubt, ask questions. Don't sit there passive and let life just happen to you. Shape your lives, shape your existence. And I'm convinced once you take control, take responsibility, that it will be a place better than you had found it. There you are. There you are, people. There you are. So, if in doubt, ask questions. I say unto you, this is the motivator. And till next time, I remain. Motivator Show. This is where success is ours for the taking. The chains have been broken.
7 ways. Pan-African ideas are changing our world.
African sovereignty. The belief that all African nations and peoples share a common destiny and must work together politically, economically, and culturally. Advocates for continental integration and collective sovereignty. Self-determination calls for the freedom of African peoples from colonialism, neo-colonialism, and foreign domination. Supports indigenous leadership, policy making, and development. Solidarity among Africans globally. Strengthen the connection between Africans on the continent and those in the diaspora, examples Caribbean, Americas, and Europe. Promote cultural pride, heritage, and shared struggle. Economic independence encourages Africa-controlled resources, regional trade, and resistance to exploitative global economic systems. Opposes dependency on former colonial powers or Western aid. Cultural revival and African identity. Restores pride in African history, languages, values, and tradition. Rejects the inferiority complex created by colonial narratives. Anti-imperialism and anti-racism. Resist all forms of racism, oppression, and imperialist expansion, including by modern global powers. Call for justice and equality for all African descendant peoples. Collective security and peace. Promote peace and cooperation amongst African nations through organizations like the Alliance of Sahel States. Oppose foreign military intervention in African affairs.